Okay, so please do feel free to get up and stretch and move and wake up, and if you need to go to the toilet at any time in the middle of the talk, we're sitting. It's a very long day, lots of talking in English, not such easy topics. And I say again, there's that room there, nobody sees you there. It's a secret room. So if you're a little tired and you feel you need more, you can go there, listen from there, and you can do anything. We won't even know. So after the morning experience, I didn't prepare anything for this talk. We'll see what will happen now. And just have a topic. So I'll say, basically, I think we mentioned it yesterday sometime. What we thought about this weekend, which is so short. I mean, it's almost over. That we'll spend half of the time to talk about our own death, and the second half talking about helping others in their own process. And already I got quite a few questions, maybe I got also, and I'm sure you have some questions about how to help others. This is actually how Shutafim Lamasa started. We were teaching, I was teaching for many years all these courses. They had all kind of strange names, like My Last Year of Living, Shnat Chaya Achona, Death as a Teacher for Life, and all kind of names, and in which we would spend a lot of time thinking about our own death. And all the time people came up and saying, yeah, okay, it's okay, my death, okay, but my father is dying, my grandmother is dying, sometimes my child is dying, how can I help others? And during that kind of courses, we were really trying to keep it with our own death. Also because we think, I think the best thing I can do for somebody else dying is, first of all, really take time to feel and think about my own death. So it's not just for me. But then came the idea of, okay, after we've done this, what can we really offer other people? So in Shutafim Lamasa, we spent 2 years of doing a course, and a big part of it is just dealing with our own death. So now is about the half time of this weekend, because tomorrow actually we will go until lunch, and after lunch will be more time of sharing between us and getting out of silence. So this session now will start the movements towards thinking of others, although it already came up a few times. But it's kind of what we're going to talk now, what I think we're going to talk now, I don't know, I'm not sure. Is not really yet helping others. It's still talking about my own death, but the title, which is not mine, it's also coming from Stephen Jenkinson's teaching, is My Death is Not My Own. Moti eino rak sheli. Actually works better in Hebrew, I think. So my death is not my own business. And coming to it, I'll say, well, if I already mentioned Stephen, which I have lots of gratitude for. He's not a Buddhist teacher. Is there anyone here who hasn't heard of the name Stephen Jenkinson? Never heard before. So we will try to remember to send you a link to his website and maybe to some teachings. He comes from the shamanistic tradition, the Indian tradition of North America. Although he's not Indian himself, he's, I think, Irish roots or something, but he's been living in Canada. He's been a spiritual caregiver, what we call Melave Ruchani, For many years, he's been working in a hospital, and he's been caring for dying people really for a very long time. And like I said, I mentioned already, there is a movie made of him called Grief Walker. I'll send you this information also. If you haven't seen this, I really highly recommend seeing it. Although Steven himself doesn't like the movie, but it is a good movie about him. Very inspiring, and he was here twice last time, about a year and a half ago. He's now dealing with sickness himself, not an easy phase of his life. So we send him our regards and wishes and lots of gratitude. And in the movie, Grief Walker, there is a woman, I think about her 50s, dying of cancer, I think. And there is in the scene, she's talking with Steven, and she's really worried about the people she's leaving behind, which is basically mainly her partner, her husband, and 2 kids who are teenagers, like I think 17 and 19 or something like this, 16 and 19. And she, so Steven asked her, what do you find yourself thinking of these days? And she says, this is what I'm worried about. What's going to happen with them? How are they going to be? The younger one, of course, more difficult, and the older one, will they stick together, the 3 of them, etc. And what Steven tells her is that how they will be in the future, this is the part of thinking about others, will not be determined but by what she's going to tell them now. Usually we put a lot of, force into what the dying person is saying, his last words. And it's not going to be determined by, her asking them to stick together or do things. It's going to be decided by how she's going to die. Not when she's going to die, not of what she's going to die, but how she's going to die. And he says it, you're setting up the table for the dinner that they will be eating after. You won't be here physically anymore. And it's a very interesting concept, to think of my dying as something I give to others. In the last, I don't know, I'm not an historian, and I might not be right in the numbers I mentioned, but I think that we all know the process. About probably 200 years ago, until about 200 years ago or so, people were giving birth or being born at home and dying at home. There was nothing else. That's what you did. And then into our lives came hospitals. Started from smaller clinics and developing to this huge thing that we call today. And slowly, at the beginning, it was recommended to get a medical help. And fairly quickly, it became mandatory. It was actually out of law to give birth at home or to die at home. You had to do it in a hospital. This is interesting because we lived in India for many years. I lived in a village in Dharamkot. Some of you have been there. Today it's a huge touristic place, but I was the only foreigner living there at the time. My first daughter, Suf, was going to be 30 soon. I was born in that village. And so I could witness the process of hospitals taking what's the word? משתלטים, taking over the lives of people. It happened very rapidly in that village in India, because the Western modern world came over, sweeping India. So just before we were there, everybody was giving birth at home in the village. We still had the traditional midwives. Everybody were passing away. I remember a few people from the village passing away at home next to us. And then came a quick phase, very quickly, where you had to go to hospital, and they actually lost much of the knowledge of the traditional giving birth. And even remember, it was when I came back already, one of the people, the older people that we knew, was having, he was getting to the last stage of life, and they had this huge argument in the village. I don't know if you were there. The guy who was the chokidar in Tushita, what's his name? The older ones. Oh, he was there for ages. I don't remember the name now. Yeah, for Dharmaka. He was gasping for air. Everybody knew it's the end. It was quite sudden. He wasn't sick. And they had a huge argument between them whether to let him die at home or to take him to hospital. And it was, this thing, if you really care for him, take him to hospital, take him to hospital. There's nothing to do for him. But so for us here, I think most of us, at least in our older years, most people have died in hospitals. And now in the last, 20 years, 30 years, we start, I'm sure there are many women here who gave birth at home. It's more common still. I think most women are still giving birth at hospitals, but it's much more common. And it comes back to that more people are dying or wishing to die at home. And with this process, which is, I think it's a good one, there's a lot to be said about it from both sides, birth and death, came another notion. So for 50 years, 150 years, our dying process was completely taken away out of our control. And then we slowly take it back. And then what comes with this is that the dying person is the king of the event. He's the only one that would say what's going on in that event, the event of dying. You will never argue with a dying person expressing his wish. And it's good. And it's, if you want to argue, please start arguing now. Don't wait for him or her or me to die, because when you are dying, maybe it's not a good time. But many of these decisions are not so beneficial, are not so considerate. Maybe many of these decisions, the last minute decisions, which last minute doesn't have to be the last few minutes, can be the last 2 years of somebody dying, are not coming from a wisdom of a culture that knows how to die and what's good, because we kind of make it all up again, because it was taken away from us for so long. We didn't grow up in a culture that we saw our grandparents die at home and our parents die at home, and they saw their grandparents, and we have this ongoing wisdom of what's really good, how it's a good way to do it. And when you say how is good for who? There's one thing, it's what I'm as the dying person, that's what we were talking about until now. It's one thing what I think is good for me. But I'm not the only person, dealing with my dying. When I'm sick, I'm not the only person dealing with my sickness. When I'm depressed, I'm not the only person dealing with my depression. Most of the times, if I have family, if I have children, if I have partner, if I have parents, if I have neighbors, if I have colleagues, They all they are all affected by my depression, by my sickness, by my old age, by everything, you know. We don't live, most of us don't live alone. So when we say what's good, you know, who am I thinking about? So going back to this story about the head of the department in the hospital telling me, what do you want from us, doctors? Yeah, we want to tell people that we have nothing more to do for them and to help them start preparing to say goodbye. But the people, and not so much the people, their families, they will kill us. He was literally saying it. They will kill me. You know, they will think I'm neglecting their loved ones. What do you mean you have nothing more to do? Whatever it is, do more. Even if you have nothing more to do, do. You know, that's the demand. And they've actually seen violence. You know, there's so much violence in hospitals. They're also there. You know, you will not give up on my mother. Just keep doing whatever it is. Keep doing. Sometimes very family members, you know, that's why they try to push us away. But sometimes, you know, trying to, you know, I lost my English. I lost my words altogether. May I mean, what's the word? Threatening. Thank you. The doctors not to stop to resuscitate the loved one, even it's, you know, it's gone. She was pronounced dead. No, don't stop. So he said, what do you want from us? Educate the people. So that's what we're doing now. We're educating the people, all of us. You know, I will not come to anyone who's dying now and tell them your death is not your own. I will not do that. I'm thinking all my years, I had one chance of a person who was so open that I could express these words to him. So what I'm saying now is not asking you to go to somebody else and tell them your death is not your own. I'm telling you now that we still are not dying in the sense I was talking before, ourselves knowing that we die. Now it's the time to think about it, that our death is not only our own business. It's not just the issue of us dying, it's the issue of how we die. And you know it, you know, I'm sure everyone in this room, you know, we are not small kids, so we've all said goodbye to people. Some people we had a chance to say goodbye to. Some people we said goodbye after they died because there was no chance to say goodbye. And we all know the difference, the different process of death leaves us sometimes for ages, for 70 years. How my mother passed away, how my father passed away, how my grandmother passed away, how the neighbor passed away, how my teacher passed away, how my child passed away. You know, how they passed away, not just the fact that they did pass away, how they passed away will make a world of difference. So in the process of reclaiming the right to be the director of our own demise, our own departure, part of this comes with the responsibility of thinking wider than I just want it to be quick, easy, nice, and I want everybody to come around loving me and caring for me, and you know, and you just do exactly what I tell you to do. Don't do this noise, don't bring this food, take this away from here, I don't want to see her, you know, now come, now go, make the light stronger, make the light lighter, less, you know, put music, take away the music. No, it's not just that. We have a wider responsibility. In many old societies, old cultures, traditions, the dying person was, you know, the old person and the dying person were treated as the greatest teacher. just by the fact that they're dying. Because when you die, and it was very clear now, in Anila's talk and meditation, when you die, in the process of dying, and this, like I said, it can be few years and it could be months or weeks or days. But once you really start the process of dying, you are not lost in this world as we are until we start dying. Now, this is all we know. This is all we care about. It's very rare and demand a lot of effort to think bigger than this world, outside of this world. Which we just like, what do you, I mean, I have to bring money to eat at home. I have to take care of my children. I have to solve the issues with my partner. I have to think about the war. I have to think, so many things to do. I mean, what do you talk about, next life and this and that? That's a privilege. I mean, we are privileged. Anila just finished the last talk saying this, we're privileged. That in the middle of life now, not because we're dying, we have the time to talk about it. When we came here yesterday, we were just swapping places with a workshop by an organization called Revadim, which happened to be led and taught by my ex-wife and the mother of Suf that I just mentioned, and a very good friend of Anila, Liora. She's a yoga teacher. Although we're divorced for many years, we have common hobbies which deal with. So the women who were here for that seminar were here because they are sick. I don't know if they're dying, but they're seriously sick, and still they're very, very privileged to get that seminar. But most of us, I don't know you. So some of you maybe have come here because you're dealing with sickness, but most of us have come here not because that. So we're really privileged to have the time to stop and think how we want to die. And it's really not a common knowledge, and we do have a responsibility that our death will be for the best. And I said, in these traditional societies, that the dying person was treated as a teacher, somebody that we should come and sit around and tell him, what is it that you see? Tell me. What special perspective do you get by already being like one leg here and one leg there? Because we are so lost in the race of life. And people would come and listen. It would be maybe, like I said, maybe the last few hours. It might be more. My first, she wasn't the very first, but the first serious woman that I accompanied, Sheliviti, was Esti. I just got a message from her son that I think it's 12 years since she passed away. And Esti called me because I was doing a course to psychologist. I did one course to psychologist in my life, or like my father would say, 3 courses. First one, last one, and one too much. I did a course to psychologist in Hod HaSharon, I think it was. And that specific day we were talking about death because it was one of the issues, and Esti had a friend sitting in that course, and she came from the course, she came to her and said, wow, today we studied about death. And Esti said, really? There was somebody actually talking about death, And immediately she got my phone, she called and she said, look, I'm leaving just 5 minutes from where you're teaching. And I know you have another 3 months to go in that course. And I promise you within 3 months, I'm out of here. It's gone, it's finished, So would you come and sit with me for an hour after you finish there? Well, she didn't keep her promise. She stayed alive for another 3 years. And not only that, she moved from Ra'anana to Netanya, so another 40 minutes or I don't know, half an hour. But she was my teacher for spiritual care, for Livui Ruchani, or whatever we call it. And I was really fortunate to sit with her. It started with, like I said, once a week for an hour. Then she said, okay, now it's really the end, and there's so much we still have to talk about. So it went up to twice a week for maybe 2 or 3 hours. At that time, I had the time to do that. And mainly I was listening to her. I was listening to what she saw about, what she understood about life, and about relationship, and about many things from this very special point of view of somebody who has one leg out of the door. There was no question of recovering. There was no, and she really felt the whole time that it's over. It's almost over, and so much to learn from. So we have a job. When we'll come to the time that we're dying, we have a job, and this job is to be present. And this job is to be generous. Yeah, it's one of, I don't remember who said, yeah, generosity. Can I live this life being generous? Wow. Generous in the sense, not in the sense of, that is really common. I'll say it in Hebrew, I don't know how to say it in English. Or maybe we'll translate it. אין שום דבר טרחני יותר מלנסות לא להיות לטורח. There is nothing more tedious than trying not to disturb others. So and I'm saying it because I've been with people who just all the time apologize. You talked about it before, and all the time apologize, and all the time, I'm so sorry you have to do so. Wow, Mom, we love you. We're here out of love. Please give us the opportunity. So I'm not talking about that kind of generosity. No, don't do this. No, please, you don't need to. Oh, I'm so sorry you had to come. This is not generous. I'm sure it's coming from a good heart, but it's not the kind of generosity I'm talking about. Generosity is really realizing that I have something special is going on here, and I can share it. Somehow, we grow up in a culture where our idea of dying is dying, not dying. That's all from Jenkinson. Everything sounds really good and compact like this. It's from Jenkinson. He knows how to put the words together. Dying, not dying. It's like it's still going on. You would still open the newspaper, or wherever we get our news from, and hear about that person that was actually sick for, 5 years, but nobody knew. And he kept showing on TV or doing, giving performances, whatever he's doing, or doing in politics, and nobody knew. And we would all be, wow, how did he manage to go on with his life without burdening us with the fact that he's dying? It's what kind of, it's living without living, dying without dying. Why would we want to do this? Are we ashamed of anything? Do we have anything to hide? Why would I want to be dying, not dying? That's the clock ticking. We're dying, no problem. So our responsibility is to die dying. Again, what Steve is saying, the word dying is an active word. It's not a passive word. You have to be killed, or to be murdered. But dying is an active word. The fact that you come to the end of your life doesn't mean that you're dying. You can end your life without dying. Dying is an active process. Either you do it or you don't do it. If you don't do it, you're being killed. You pass away. You're not dying. Dying is participating in living the world. And we have a responsibility to do it. It happened many times in my life, but I just came up with one story. Very, very good Dharma friend of mine called me years ago and asked if I would sit with her and her husband, which I knew and was good friend himself as well. And he was a really kind of, macho guy. I loved him, everything, but not the guy to sit and talk about spiritual things. And we sat together, and he was in tears, and he said, "Look, my father is gravely ill. The doctors called us. We didn't know. He was, I think, I don't know, in his 70s, I guess. So not, that old. And the father and the mother were kind of managing the sickness. They would go to hospital, come back. Sometimes he would be hospitalized. Usually they didn't know that he was hospitalized only until he came back home. It was only for a short time. So they thought, he's old, almost 75, he's very old. And he's dealing with it and everything is fine. Then they found out, no, he has cancer and he's dying. He already, the mother and him, they already know it for some time. He made the mother swear that she will not tell anyone, so she didn't. And now they couldn't hide it anymore. He was hospitalized for a longer time. At the beginning, he didn't allow them to come at all. And now they decided there were 4 brothers, which I could relate to because I'm also coming from a family of 4 brothers and a father that didn't like to talk about himself dying. And so the doctors actually called them to the office. One of the doctors called them to the office, 4 brothers, or some of them, they asked him, but they were sitting in the doctor's office without the father because he would not agree to sit together. And the doctors told them, look, it's a matter of weeks. And they came out when the father saw them, and he was so angry that they went to the doctor that he wanted everybody to go away. And they just didn't know what to do. They really loved him. He did all this. He was a really good father. I mean, I didn't know him, but he was talking about it very kindly. He did all this because he was trying to protect them. Each one of them was in the middle of his life journey. They had lots of issues to deal with. He didn't want to burden them, and also he didn't want to live through this phase where he's so weak and he needs. And he cannot give, he now has to receive. He didn't want this part of his life. And my friend asked me, what can we do? We don't want him to go away like this. He might pass away tomorrow. And we'll have no chance of saying goodbye. It was like not reasonable even to think about it. So I told him, look, I don't know, ask your father if he would agree to talk to me. If he wants to talk to me, I'll be happy to talk. I don't know if I can convince him or anything, but I'll happily go there. And he was really grateful, but of course his father didn't want to talk to me. Why would he want to talk to me? I mean, if he doesn't want to talk to his son, he definitely didn't want to talk to me. So we had a meeting of the 5 of them, the mother and the 4 brothers, which were in their 40s, 30s, 40s, not children. And there was so much pain there, 4 tough guys like this, and there was so much pain, so many tears that they couldn't request from him to present, to allow them to be present, to be part of it, to share this, And in this conversation, it came up again and again, we will go, we will tell him, we will force him, we'll send you there, they had this thing, will put me in disguise and I'll go there in the summer, and no, of course, I wouldn't do that, and I don't think they managed to do that. And he passed away within 2 weeks from there without saying goodbye to anyone, and there was so much pain left. And it's too late at that stage to go and tell someone. Most of the time it's too late, That's why I'm telling you now. And I'm asking you to talk with everyone you meet about it. When you come back from the workshop, it's a really good opportunity, People will ask, where have you been? Where did you go the weekend? You and your retreats and things. And you say, oh, do you want to hear where did I go? Not so sure about it. And use the opportunity, because when somebody's already got the news of his departure, and everything goes really, it's very difficult to bring it up, because now we all have to join forces to help him recover. We're not talking about death now. Now talking about death would be almost like being a traitor, It's like now we are fighting for life. So the best time to do it, if you still have the opportunity, is when nobody is dealing with the news of dying. We are all fine. We will all live forever. It's just a kind of almost theoretical thing. It's a Buddhist thing. Let's just talk about it. That's a good time to lay the foundation and talk and start bringing it in. Start listening to each other, expressing your thoughts about it, maybe your wishes, maybe what came up in the workshop, asking others, they ask us in the workshop, what would be important for us when we die? What would be important for you, mommy? What would be important for you, my son or my daughter, if they're old enough? Better wait until they're more than 3 years old. Just bring up the issue, kind of open the channel. So you have some, then it might slowly kind of feed itself. So we say one idea, and then in 2 weeks or 2 months we come back and say, I saw this movie, this movie, and then I thought, actually maybe I would prefer this, or maybe I would do this. And slowly we start to bring it into something we talk about. We talk about with our parents, those of us that our parents are still alive. We talk about between us. And yes, we talk about it with our children when we come to the age we think it's appropriate. And I really think it's a fairly young age that it's starting to be appropriate, because they're dealing with it, Maybe I'll say just a quick word about it, I remember I have 4 kids, I already mentioned the eldest one, so there are 2 older ones and 2 younger daughters. And the younger ones are 16 and 14, more or less. Yeah? No? Higher? No. Don't push it, Michal. More than 16? No, she's going to be 16 now. She's more than 14, that's true. She's 15, that's true. I'm sorry, I need somebody to help me. Michal's daughter is the same age like the youngest one. And I really remember the day, and maybe you remember it with your children or nephews or whatever, and grandchildren, that they realized, one of them, and when she got the other, they realized that everybody gonna die. It was a crisis. They were not so much shocked by the fact that they're gonna die. Like us, it's fairly difficult to think about us dying, but they were shocked by the fact that we're gonna die, the parents. They were so shocked about it that that night they held my hand, and they wouldn't let me go to the other room when they went to bed. Because being the annoying father that I am, you can already relate to it, I think, I couldn't promise them that I'll be alive next morning. Because I cannot promise that. I'm sorry. So she wouldn't let me go. which is the reasonable thing to do, which is what we all will do if you really realized that she or he might not be there in the morning. You know, the fact that she held to my hand and wouldn't let me go, this is not a crazy thing. The crazy thing is that within 2 or 3 days, they went back to normal as if they never realized this truth and it never happened. And we all went back to the game that we're all going to live forever. And nothing wrong will happen. This is the crazy thing. It was there for 2, 3 days. Where did it go? Where did we push it? So when I'm saying talking about it even with our children, you're not going to tell them anything they don't know. But by talking about it, we tell them that it's allowed to express their fears, that we are also afraid. Afraid to lose our own parents, afraid to die. When we die, we lose everyone. It's really funny that we, you know, when we talk about death, people say, I have no problem to die, because what do I care? I die. You have to deal with it, you know? But we are really scared of losing. It's not a word that I like, but you know, saying goodbye to loved ones. When we die, if we have the time to die actively, presently, we lose everyone. We don't take anyone with us. We say goodbye to everybody. We go through the curtain or whatever, you know, image you have, and we are completely alone. How can, if we are scared of losing one of our, you know, children, grandchildren, partners, parents, how can we not be afraid of losing everyone? But because we cannot bring our mind to how it's going to be the second after, you know, then we just can't feel this fear, or maybe some of us can. So we have the responsibility to figure out what kind of departure we want to lead. We don't have to have now the whole thing arranged and decided and write it down. We just have to let our mind be there, and be there in a much wider way than just how am I going to make it be as smooth and suffering less and comfortable and beautiful and romantic as I can do it. Much bigger than that, you know? When Stephen in the movie goes on with this mother and tells her, she asks him, I think, you know, what do you mean? How am I setting up the table for their future years? And he says something about, you know, Stephen technically is speaking English, but it's only technically. It's you can't really follow all the words always. Just a second. But he says basically something of how do I look at the eyes of the unbearable truth of passing away when it's so unbearable that everybody wants to look away? How do I keep being present with the knowledge of the one thing that none of us wants to know? What does it mean? How do we do it? You know, we all know how is it to live without thinking about death. Like I said about the children, we all that's how we do. We lead life. We all know that the only certain thing of life is dying, is death. But somehow we lead all our life as if it doesn't exist. So what does it mean to live your life knowing, looking at the eyes of death and still being present here in life? That's the one thing that a dying person can teach us. If he's ready to be actively dying, presently dying, to be present at his dying. That's what we can one day be able to teach our children. But instead of wanting to teach them that, many times when it comes, we want to save them from that. So we do everything we can not to talk about it and not to let them know that we are dying. What does it mean? I mean, I've been teaching about death for, 20-something years. I don't know what it is because I'm not dying. I know that I can die today. I might, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, remember he had a folder with all kinds of articles about death. It's like so one of them I remember because, it was this guy who was, a doctor, professor, something, who gave a lecture about death and dying in a seminar, finished, sat down, took a candy and got choked and died. And I was like 2 minutes after he sat down giving a talk. But, this is to encounter the feeling that I have. This is the only reason I'm doing what I'm doing. That this is the insurance against dying. If I'll be sitting here and talk about dying, it means I will not die, at least not before my time, which is, I think, 150. I think I'm pushing it a little bit. So I don't know what it is. I can talk about it, and we talk about it, and we think there is benefit in it, but I cannot share with you what is it to live, to be here, but to know that you're not going to be here tomorrow or the day after. I cannot share this with you because I'm not dying. I don't think that I know. Just because I've read the books and I've done this meditation hundreds of times, I don't think that I know. The reason I love going to dying people is because I love hearing it from them. It's not one answer. It's not one thing. It doesn't have to be one thing that they all tell me. They tell me different things. But whenever I find someone who's generous enough to share their journey with me, there's so much to learn. So am I generous enough now, when I'm not particularly dying, to set my motivation that when my time will come, I will share my journey. I will not hide it. I will not take it away from all the people that I can give them this knowledge. I don't know what this knowledge will be. I don't know. I'm sure that when I will be dying, it will not be the same course I've been teaching for the last 20 years. This is now me doing whatever I can do to open our minds to the subject. But I don't have. It's been 59 years since the last time I died. My memory is not so good, so I don't remember. But to people who can actually tell us something. But it's not just telling us how is it to die, It's really telling us something much more, much deeper than that. And it might not come in very clear philosophical ideas. Depends on the person training and capacities and other things. But we might listen. What is it to live in a perspective not of 80 years or 100 years, but with a perspective of 1,000 years? Can you think about it for a second? I mean, we can only think about it, but you know what? We think about this life, we think about this weekend as one of the, I spend the weekend here. I have 52 weekends a year. It's something that thinks in terms of the 80, 90, 100 years that we expect to live. But if we have already one leg outside the door, and something gets much wider, and we don't think only in terms. It doesn't mean that we know what's going to happen after. It doesn't mean that we know reincarnation or we solve the problems. No, we don't know that. Usually we don't know that before. as dying person, I wouldn't have much more knowledge about that than I have now. It would be beliefs, faith, understandings, maybe logic, but not a knowledge. But still, I'm not rooted in this life in the same way like we are. So something gets much wider. There's a different perspective. What's important, what's not important, what makes me happy, what's not. You know, that's where spiritual care, livui ruchani, comes into the picture. It's not so much what we, as the spiritual care givers, tell the dying person. It's more that we are ready to be very present for that wider perspective that maybe for other people sometimes it's difficult to listen to because they're not used to. There was a lady that passed away a few years ago. She came from the ultra-Orthodox, Shacharedit. And she passed away, I think she was around 40, with small kids at home. She actually came to do the course we did in Psychodharma at the time that was called my last year to live, Shnat Chaya Achona. And but I already heard about her. She was quite famous. She had 2 rounds of cancer, so she was the one that within she passed away, but one that was a few years before that. And after her first round, from which she recovered, she actually came out, you know, it's Ama Aaron, wanted to talk about death, because what happened, she went to ultra-Orthodox hospital, Bikur Cholim, here in Jerusalem, in which at that time there were only ultra-Orthodox people dying. So of course the oncological department is different for men and women. So she was in the women part, and all the women lying there were dying. That's what happens in oncological department. And the one thing that you couldn't talk about was death. And more than that, the one thing you really couldn't mention is any fear. You wouldn't say that you're afraid to die, because if you are a good woman like you're supposed to be, then you have nothing to worry about. God will take care of you. You're going to heaven. Everything is good. If you have any fear, that might be a sign that you're not such a good woman like you pretend to be. So just mentioning that you are worried about what's going to be, where are you going to be the day, you know, after, the second after, just mentioning it is already something to be really ashamed of. And she did a lot. She wrote books and she did talks, and she came, you know, she was in the newspapers just asking people to talk about it. You know, she was amazing example. You don't have to do it like this. You don't have to write books, and maybe you don't have time. She had time because she recovered from the first round of cancer, and then she had time. But she was an amazing example of generosity, of sharing her journey, sharing the fear of a young mother dying with, I don't remember how many kids at home, and, you know, and leaving them and leaving herself, you know, going herself, just being openly ready to talk about the fear was a huge gift for so many people. You know, and she shared it with us. I was not teaching her at that part, and she didn't finish the year. It was my last year, but she didn't last the whole year. So I was supposed to teach the second semester. By that time, she already passed away. But she did share with the people who were in the course until I think about 2 weeks before she passed away. She shared her thoughts. Nir, who passed away few months ago was also one like this that shared a lot openly with whoever was ready to listen. And I'm sure you know more people. So my death is not only my own. It's not just my own business. And the time to think about it and talk about it and think about it again is now. Because if we want to plant the seeds now, when the doctor calls us, and tells us, this and this, and then it might be too late to start learn different perspective. So yeah, let's take just a few minutes, kind of close our eyes and be with that invitation. At the previous talk, I asked you to imagine yourself on your deathbed. Now I want you to imagine your family, your loved ones, after you passed away. Just after, maybe the day after. Whoever it is that you think would care about you having left your body. So if you have children, you can think of your children. If you have a partner, if you have parents, if you have students, patients, colleagues, neighbors, good friends. If we were to die today, not sometime in the future, what would be their reaction? And maybe just try to think how would they be a year after? And maybe 5 years after? I mean, we all have experience of other people who passed away, so we have some idea. Now just bring to mind the option. And this, of course, we don't control, Anila said it again and again, and we said it before. We have no guarantee. But we are just wanting to entertain the option that if the circumstances will allow us, we will make our departure an amazing opportunity for connection, for celebrating the love and the journey that we shared, for brave and open and honest goodbye saying, that a day after we pass away, everybody will be probably still weeping, of course we will be, and crying and sad. But not just that. There will be also this light in their eyes that we've all met previously with other people living in a similar way. They'll have this light in their eyes from the gift that we left with them, from the love that we shared openly, including the end of our physical connection. That each one of them will carry with her or with him the gift that we deposited with him in our departure. That many years later, when their time to leave the body will come, they will have deep inside them, ingrained on their heart, the example that we gave them. How is it possible to do it? Actively dying, openly saying goodbye. And if this idea inspires us, then we can come back to this moment or tomorrow evening when we come back from this retreat, this weekend. Just putting the intention to create the ground, not to wait until it's too late, but to create the ground for an open discussion, even if it's difficult. Sometimes you just need to go over the first barrier. You don't have to force anyone, that doesn't help, but to offer. To be honest, to be loving, to be generous, to be brave. All these qualities we said we want to have maybe at the time of departure, well, they are needed now, not just sometime in the future. That's the time to practice them. What a huge contribution we can have, not just to our loved ones, but to the whole community. to our tribe, to our society, to our culture. The gift of dying. Okay, we're still alive. We're doing all the efforts we can, and we're still alive, so we'll keep on. So now it's 6:15, and we will take time. This is the time for the volunteers, the people who volunteer to help to prepare dinner to go down. We will have only one dinner because half of us have gave up on dinner, so we don't need to prepare in the two kitchens. So just the people who volunteer to help here. We'll go down in a second and prepare dinner. The rest of us, we have 45 minutes. And what I recommend you to do is the practice we call wandering, shotetut. And this practice is a little bit different from walking meditation. And in this practice, we walk, but without any plans, without any idea where we're going. And you can practice it in the garden. You don't have to go out. Maybe it's not enough time to start going out, and it might be too intense. So we can just practice here. But just coming out of the building and not knowing where you go next. Don't stop at the door because there are many other wanderers behind you. So make two free steps, and just don't know where you're going. And maybe you even stand for a few seconds or minutes. There's some people still standing there from the last retreat, not knowing where to go. But usually, after a few seconds, you'll find yourself walking somewhere. So you walk a few steps, trying to be really present, and then you'll come to a junction. In this garden, there is a junction every 5 steps. And again, you stop. And you don't know where to go next. So you stand there for a second. Maybe you go just back to where you came from. Maybe you go right. Maybe you go left. Maybe you go straight. You don't know. You just try to be present. Then you'll find yourself walking again. And when you start walking, you'll start to have a plan. Oh, I really want to see what's there. And I wonder what's the view from there. Once you realize you have a plan, drop it. Forget it. And again, come back to not knowing. The journey we're talking about here, again, it might seem that Anila and me are trying to tell you how death is going to be. But we're trying to do the opposite. We're trying to prepare you to not knowing and feeling comfortable and being able to relax in not knowing. We're not telling you how it's going to be because we don't know. We read, we heard, we share, but we don't know. So let's try going out not knowing and see it's very strong. You start walking and you really want to see the view from there, or what is this light there, or I've never been there. You see how it's pulling you, and drop it and don't know. Maybe you can turn around yourself, whatever it is, stand for a second, see, whatever. And then, so we'll be wandering for the next 40 minutes or so. Who is on the gong? מי עושה גונג? קודם מישהו פה, לא? מי זה? נעלם לנו. זה את? את עשית קודם? אז כן את. אוקיי. איך? מה שמך? אז ענבל תעשה לנו גונג ב7. לפני שאת עושה את הגונג, תרדי רגע למטה, תראי שהם מוכנים. בסדר? הם לא מוכנים, אז תחכי עוד רגע, עד שהם יהיו מוכנים, אבל את הגונג תעשי קצת כזה יותר רחב, חזק ורחב, כן? כזה, בשביל שהגונג יהיה חזק, מכירה, נכון? פה עוסקים אותו פתוח סבבה. So let's go and wander around and see what comes. There's dinner at 7, and we meet again here at 8. So we have one more gong at 5 minutes to 8. It will be the last one, I think, for today. And the people who are not eating, well, you can keep wandering until 8.